Hello, I am the Story Girl, and welcome to the story of the Snow Queen, Part 2, Gerda and the Charm Woman. If you're new to our January stories, you might want to go ahead and watch the Snow Queen Part 1, The Goblin Glass, which I will put in the cards right up here. If not, let us continue with the story. Gerda waited all winter for Kay to come home, but he didn't. Soon, the fingers of the sun began to poke through the dark clouds of winter, and all the warmth and light returned to the land. For Gerda, it seemed as though it was very dark indeed. All of the adults in the village said that Kay was probably taken by the river. So she thought she would just go and ask. She went while her granny was asleep, put as many sugar cookies as she could find in a handkerchief, and wore her best and newest little red shoes. She trotted down to the river and called out to the river, "River, river, have you taken Kay?" There was no answer. Only the rush of the sounds of water. Gerda tried again. "River, I would really like Kay back. Is he there with you? Have you taken him?" Again, no response. The river just lapped at her feet, touching her little red shoes. Gerda liked these shoes very much, but it seemed to her as though the river wanted them very much as well, and so she carefully bent down and slipped off her new, beautiful red shoes. "Mr. River," she said very politely, "here are my red shoes that you wanted, but I will only give them to you if you give Kay to me." She threw them out into the current. The current swashed and flowed and brought the little shoes right back to Gerda's now little bare feet. Perhaps she didn't throw them out far enough. So she found a little boat that was moored right next to where she had been standing, and stood out upon the edge of the boat and said, "Please, Mr. River, my shoes for my friend," and she threw the shoes back into the river. Well, Gerda didn't know this, but the boat she was standing in wasn't as secure as she thought it was at first, and the water soon began to take the boat and Gerda away. At first she was frightened. The shoes were just right there behind her boat, flowing down the current, but then she thought, "Perhaps the river is taking me to Kay." But I'm afraid, my friend, that he was not. Poor old Mr. River hadn't seen Kay all winter, or all spring for that matter, had no idea how to help Gerda. He just flowed along in his normal fashion, and Gerda sat down and munched a few sugar cookies. And as she sat and munched, she began to hum. What was she humming? She was humming the low, warm, throbbing sounds that she heard coming down from the sun every day that it shined upon her face. And as she hummed, the air began to be filled with warmth. Flowers perked up, the grass seemed to straighten their backs, and the river flowed all the more serenely. She hummed and munched and hummed and munched. Must have gone very far away from Granny in the town where she lived, but soon she saw something in the distance on the bank. "Soldiers? Hello!" she called out, but they didn't respond. 2 soldiers just stood there, rifles in position, with their hats on straight and smart, with their fine red jackets. Gerda tried again. "Hello there, hello!" But these two soldiers were made out of wood and couldn't respond even if they wanted to. But behind them was a beautiful, lovely, colorful, painted little house. And the person who was not made out of wood inside the house heard Gerda's call. It was an old woman, not as old as Gerda's granny, but old all the same, wearing a large flowered bonnet, a hat with flowers painted all over it in many beautiful colors, and carrying a cane. She came to the window. She saw the boat. She came out the door and called, "Oh, my dear little girl. Oh, you should not be in that boat just floating along." And she used her stick to pull Gerda's boat to shore. Gerda and her little bare feet stood in front of the old woman and did her best at a curtsy, which was taught to girls at that time. "Oh, what a dear little creature you are," said the old woman. "Won't you come into my house? I just picked the cherries off of my cherry tree, and you can have as many as you wish. Come in and tell me your story." Gerda followed the old woman into her house and sat down at the table and saw the plumpest, most beautiful cherries she'd ever seen in her whole life, and began to eat quite greedily, the red cherry juices staining her fingers and lips. And all the while she told the old woman all about the river, and Kay, who may have been taken by the river, and who may be dead, and her granny, and the song of the sun that she felt thrumming through her mind. "Oh, what a precious, sweet little thing," said the old woman quite quietly so Gerda couldn't hear. "Oh, if only." The old woman reached into her apron pocket and brought out a beautifully carved wooden comb. And with this comb she began to comb through Gerda's hair. Comb, comb, comb. "Tell me more, little child. Tell me more about your little friend." And so Gerda told her all about their play place, the beautiful garden of roses, those roses that grew more lush and beautiful than any roses in all the town. Comb, comb, comb. Yes, roses are very beautiful. All flowers are beautiful, little girl. Wouldn't you love, comb, comb, to see my own garden? Comb, comb. But Gerda's eyes were heavy. They were so heavy that soon as the old woman combed her hair, she laid her head on the table and slept amongst the cherries. As soon as the old woman saw that the girl was asleep, she hobbled out her back door and called out in words of power, "Roses, sink down into the earth and disappear from this garden." Well, it was a strange thing to have said, but at her word, every rose that was in her beautifully fenced garden began to curl up inside of itself and sink underneath the ground. You see, this woman was a charm woman. The people who lived in the town might have called her a witch, but she wasn't a wicked witch, and she wasn't an evil person. She was a charm woman who knew the language of the earth and the sun, and who could speak to flowers and they would grow or shrivel at her word, and who had built her own little world of the sun, where the winter never touched it, where the very flowers seemed to glow, and where the cherries grew the sweetest and never had a worm or a canker. Yes, the charm woman was powerful in her own right, powerful enough to make Gerda forget all about Kay, all about her garden with her magic comb. But she didn't think her power was strong enough to keep Gerda from remembering if she was given the correct image in front of her. And since Gerda loved the roses and had so much experience with roses, she knew the moment Gerda saw her roses that she would remember and she would leave. And what this woman wanted more than anything else was a child, a little daughter, all her own. A little daughter had been brought to her, this beautiful little barefooted girl who hummed with the beautiful sound of the sun. Yes, she would keep this girl. This little girl who was going on a journey that was very much too much for her. She would keep and care for this little girl inside of her garden, where the fingers of winter never touched. The old woman went back inside the house, and at the sound of her tapping wooden stick on the ground, Gerda opened her eyes. "Oh, I'm afraid I've fallen asleep." "Oh, you did indeed, and you ate a great many cherries. But from now on, you can eat as many cherries as you wish, and I shall make you cherry pies, cherry cookies, all kinds of lovely things to eat. Wouldn't you like to go see the flowers in my garden?" said the old woman. "Oh, yes, very much," said Gerda, yawning, and she jumped up and patted her bare feet out into the garden, where she saw the most beautiful flowers, lilies and violets and hyacinths and hibiscus, all different kinds of flowers in all different colors, and the colorful fence that surrounded them. And she giggled and ran and heard the voices of the butterflies saying, "Hello there, hello." She called back to them, "Hello," and she began to play. She played rolling down the hills and running among all the flowers and chasing the butterflies and letting the butterflies chase her. And when she was tired of playing, she went back into the little colorful house where the charm woman had baked a beautiful cherry pie. She ate as much as she wished, and when she was done, the old woman led her to a little bed just her size. She curled up and fell asleep. She had forgotten all. Gerda woke the next morning and many more mornings after that, and her days were very much the same, playing in the garden and listening to the sound of the river and listening to the wind and humming the song of the sun in her heart. And it was many, many, many more days than she well understood, feasting upon fresh cherries and cherry baked goods, while the old woman, beaming with pleasure, would watch her own little girl running in the garden. Sometimes, at night, Gerda had the idea that she was looking for someone. But it was a passing fancy, and it would go away soon enough, and so it didn't bother her very much, until the day she saw something on the old charm woman's hat. As you remember, her bonnet was painted all through with the most colorful and beautiful flowers. She saw that one of these flowers was a rose. A rose. The word came easily enough to her lips. A rose. "I would like to see more roses," she thought, and she ran throughout the garden. But there were no roses in the whole garden. How could it be in this most beautiful of gardens that the most beautiful of flowers should be missing? She put her face to the ground and listened. And underneath the ground she could hear the voices of the roses and their hearts beating underneath the ground. "Oh, Somebody has buried them. Somebody has taken them away. And a single tear fell from her eyes. And that teardrop, warm and glowing with the power of the sun, seeped into the ground. Oh, roses, won't you come say hello to me? And the power of her words, every rose sprung back up out of the ground and opened up their petals and sang aloud together, "Hello, we are here," in their most beautiful and glorious voices. Gerda clapped her hands for joy, but when she saw them, everything came back into her memory. Kay and the sugared cookies and Granny and the winter and the river. And Kay, she had forgotten all about Kay. She ran over to the roses and stroked their beautiful petals and said, "Oh, roses, I'd forgotten all about Kay, and he's probably dead. I don't know how long it has been." "Shh," whispered the voices of the roses. "Do not worry, Gerda. We were just under the ground, and we met many there. But Kay was not among them. Kay is not under the ground. Therefore, he must be walking here above the earth." "Are you sure?" said Gerda. "Yes." The flowers nodded their beautiful heads. "Kay is not under the ground." Gerda was so pleased that she did a little dance just at that moment. All of the flowers opened their voices and began to sing, and she heard that their songs were all the same, all singing the praises of life and the beauty of the world. Oh, Gerda wouldn't stay another moment. She ran to the gate, but as she got there, the voice of the old woman called out, "Where are you going? Where are you going?" "Oh," Gerda turned around. She curtsied. My friend," said she to the charwoman, "I thank you very much for your kindness and generosity to me, but I must go." "Why must you go?" said the old woman. "Why must you go?" "Stay here where it's warm. Stay here where it's safe. Stay here where I can look after you." Oh. Gerda wanted to be warm and safe, but she had to find Kay. "No," said Gerda, and she opened the gate and ran for all that she was worth, ran as fast as she could, ran. But in her haste to leave the charwoman, she had forgotten her shoes. Again, she was barefoot. Oh, and her bare feet felt how cold the ground was. When she had left her granny's house, it had just been spring, but she knew now, looking at the trees that were all turning gold and red and brown leaved, that she had been with the charwoman all spring long. The entire spring. She had wasted so much time she could have spent searching for her dear friend Kay. Oh, she sat down upon a stone and started to cry, started to weep, until she heard a voice at her elbow. She heard a bit of what sounded like a laugh. She looked down and saw. You thought I cut it off rather abruptly. That's because I did. Gerda is about to meet her next obstacle in her journey to find Kay. Have you ever noticed that whenever you set out to do something, there always happens to be something standing in your way, trying to make it harder for you to get what you want to get done, even if it's not a bad thing? That is what's happening to Gerda right now. And she will have the chance to stay in many a warm and safe place. Will she choose to stay? Or will she choose to go after and find Kay? We will see. Remember, you are the main character of your story. Thank you for joining my story today. Bye.